What's going on, boys? Thanks to our patrons and Fiverr customers. Subscribe to our Patreon free for behind the scenes stuff. Arm yourselves, life stuff. I was thinking about patterns today, and this one's tricky. When you use anything, your using it admits a need for it. And this weird inversion happens by which the more useful something is to you, or the better you are at it, and I don't just mean a literal tool, I can mean a perspective, the more you need it, the more you rely on it. Because this thing is solving a problem for you, which you would think makes you stronger, and in a sense it does, but also the less you can exist and accomplish without it. Now, this is tricky because finding these tools is a big part of what life is. That's what we're all doing at all times. Lots of problems in life, and very few solutions, and even fewer good ones. So when you find something that works, you feel like it's a victory, and it is a victory. But it's like climbing a ladder. The more you rely on it, or the better it is at solving problems, especially the more pride you take in it, the further you'll fall if something happens to it. So you get into this precarious position. This is working, but what happens if and when it stops working? Or what happens if this tool, by its nature, boxes you into another problem that it relies on to solve other problems? Then you're just stuck with this problem. Because if you tried to confront it, then you'd lose everything, which is maybe more difficult than just losing everything. And I'm sure you can guess from the video's title, one of these tools is identity. Identity is a great tool. Identity can make you very strong. But there are two troubles with relying on identity like this. One, the more you wield your identity out in the world among people, the more you also signal weakness to other people and also tell them your vulnerabilities. Because when you stick your idea of yourself or apply your idea of yourself to everything, stick it in everyone's faces, you are signaling to them how important your identity is to you as a tool. As in, other people are looking at you and thinking, how, if we wanted to, how best could we hurt this person? Well, clearly they need their self-image to this extent because they push it all the time, they use it all the time. This is important to them, they need it. That's where you strike. And also when you're doing this with vulnerability, you are in displaying your strengths or your fortitude, your opinions, your guiding principles. You are outlining, or as you're outlining the way your identity makes you strong, you are also outlining for people exactly where your vulnerabilities are. Because when you push an identity like this, what you're saying is, I am A, B, and C. And, or ergo, I am not X, Y, and Z. Meaning, X, Y, and Z are where it'll be best to hit you. Where you're weakest, where it'll have the most impact, because everybody is A, B, and C, and X, Y, and Z. In fact, I think that's, or if you're someone who wields an identity like a tool, it's like a balance of scales, right? You are putting great weight on this conscious idea of yourself while also making this unconscious truth about yourself, because you are a totality, unfortunately, that much stronger, that much more motivated with its own agency, because it's equal and opposite reaction. You're familiar with the shadow. We talk about it enough on this channel. And also, that's probably where you will trip yourself up and have a catastrophic event. But if you don't, that's where someone else can hit you and cause that catastrophic event. And with these identity people, there is always a deep discomfort with, fear of, hatred of this thing, this image that they say they aren't, because on some level they know they are, or at least that's a part of them, but to keep this train running of their conscious identity that's a tool for them, that they wield like a sword, they can't do anything about it, so they choose not to engage with it, or they repress it further internally and externally, and it just makes the foundation that much weaker and more inviting to attack. And I want to say here, despite what you think of me, how great you think I am, how high I am, how mighty I am, how all-knowing, omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, all these wonderful things, I am terrified to find out in 5 years what I'm doing gravely wrong right now, or what vulnerabilities, grave vulnerabilities, I have that I'm repressing, I'm not even aware of. There is no winning. So, as I'm talking about this, don't think I'm saying I'm free of this, or I am giving you some perfect perspective. I know it's very tempting to view it that way. I feel the same way a lot of the time. But if you can't handle doubt from other people or from yourself, that's an indication you are in a vulnerable position, probably of your own creation. And this is also not to say anytime you feel doubt internally or get doubt from other people, you should change. This is more of a Ghost of Christmas something situation. It's a Kreia situation, maybe. The Force, your identity, is a powerful tool, and you can use it, you can lean on it, but if you have nothing else, if you don't know what you'd do without it, then you aren't just vulnerable to collapse. Collapse is inevitable, because the world is cruel and it will not pass up an opportunity if you permit it one. So, one more time, I understand why identity people use identity in this way, need identity in this way. The world is an ugly place and a lot of shit doesn't work, but you really need to be careful when identity is your primary tool, especially when you're using it in this forward way. When your shovel breaks, you have broken a tool. When your identity breaks, or is broken, you fall apart, and putting yourself back together takes time and is difficult. To believe in something is to be willing to betray it. In other words, don't get too comfortable with or attached to your identity unless you've torn it down, played with alternatives, and are willing and able to walk away from it when the time comes. And here, well, this applies to everybody, but here I'm thinking mostly about two of these stick-around sociopaths, because they're very similar. Very, very, very similar. But they differ in this identity game. One uses identity like a tool, the way we've been talking about. Solace, strength, willpower, and so on. And the reasons for having this identity, the reasons for using it, all make complete sense. And at this stage in both of their lives, that, or where they are, also makes complete sense. But this one, who leans on identity more, it's like a table. It has legs. Very kickable legs. And I won't be kicking them because that is a service reserved for women I love, because that process is always gruesome, and unless, well, unless a lot of things, essentially what you're doing is you are paying lots of your energy and time and emotional state to fight somebody who probably doesn't want you fighting them, and will, almost certainly, in almost every case, outside this love situation, become an enemy afterward so you can make them stronger. And then what are you left with? You have little energy, you're frazzled, you're weak because you just fought this, and now you have an enemy you didn't have before who is stronger. That is the sort of losing deal you take only when you care about someone a lot. You're poking someone where they're vulnerable so they will cover up their vulnerabilities, but nobody likes getting poked where they're vulnerable. I mean, the way I deal with that entire identity thing these days is I am now relying on this autopilot. I'm leaning way into righteousness, getting myself willing and able to do things or to think things I would think I would never think or do, but you need to be able to, because those things are vulnerabilities, and the moment it's most important is the moment you'll be getting hit. You don't want to be figuring this out on the spot in the middle of one of these attacks. My theory is allowing this autopilot or allowing this instinct to guide most of what you do. And when you have an identity, keep it more within this realm of clothing, not of limbs, so nobody really knows what you are, least of all yourself. There doesn't appear to be, or where there appears to be rhyme and reason, there's not as much as you'd think. I think it's a Patton quote or sentiment. It's hard for your enemies to prepare for what you'll do when you don't know what you'll do. Now again, probably in 5 to 10 years, I will look back on this strategy and with the perfect hindsight and know what's wrong with this, what I could be doing better. Right now, my guesses are instability, freaking people out, or creating consequences by doing unexpected and odd things. Anger is also very at the front now, and I've always had anger problems, but they're so far in the background, it takes a lot to get them to come out. When they do, it's explosive, but that's rare. Now, my coat will get caught on something, and it'll be completely my fault, and then I'll go hit shit with a hammer for a few minutes until I calm down. And then on top of that, it's difficult for anyone to get close to you when you're erratic in this way. It does keep you safer in some ways, makes you less of a target in some ways, but it makes you more of a target in others, and it makes the waters around your sea fortress difficult to navigate, and probably not worth the effort. Is that a cost you're willing to pay? At present, yes, but in 5 years, maybe not. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. Anyway, back to these stick-arounders, or these two stick-arounders, and I think in my mind, mentally, I'm referring to them as Elias and Barnes. Elias puts up the hard front, the prickly rogue with the heart of gold thing. But underneath that is a gentleness, is an innocence, is a sweetness. But this entire configuration is concerning and stress-inducing for two reasons. That front is prickly, and it likes wielding itself or being wielded to generate a sense of control and a sense of security, because that sweetness and that innocence is there and it is real. But what's happening when you do that is you are asking people to hit you where it's going to hurt worst. And it will really hurt because when you rely on an identity in this way, particularly a prickly identity for control, for security, you counterintuitively give people reasons to want to attack you. You're making yourself a target on one level, but the problem is you're making yourself a target because you are a target. And when you get targeted by someone who knows how to read what you're doing or read what you are and is motivated to, you have a core that can take a lot of damage. This all is exactly what we've been talking about this entire video. But Barnes is different in an interesting way. I really don't read many vulnerabilities from Barnes. And I think it's because Barnes's approach is the inversion of Elias's. Now, it feels like Barnes doesn't have a lot of momentum yet, but Barnes is in a situation to build a lot of momentum fast and without kick-outable legs. And that's because Barnes doesn't really have an identity. At least not one I've been able to pick up on. There's a negative self-image, which Elias has too. So does everybody. I recognize that's even more intense among sociopaths. But where Elias is taking this high moxie, high energy, high fire approach to things, Barnes is operating in this almost pre-defeated fashion, which ironically makes Barnes a lot stronger, because it reads to me like they've achieved similar power levels. The difference is Elias has motivation, but also vulnerabilities, whereas Barnes doesn't have many particular motivations, but also way fewer to know, to my eyes, vulnerabilities. Now, everyone's vulnerable, but how do you appraise vulnerability? You ask yourself, if I wanted to hurt this person, how would I do it? How are they asking to be hurt? And can you visualize what they would look like hurt? Elias, yes, yes, and yes. Barnes, no. Attacking someone like Elias is like being assigned to demolish a house. Wanting to attack someone like Barnes is like being assigned to demolish air. And it's interesting because Barnes feels like she's playing with identities. Maybe I could be this, or I was that, or these are some whatever things. But internally it feels like there is no belief in anything, including, hazarding a guess here, the few things she says she believes in. Meaning, when Barnes gets into a rhythm, gets into motion, she's going to be really hard to hurt or to stop, because how do you fight a tornado? There's no fighting a tornado. There's only hiding from it. Versus in the Elias situation, how do you fight a tank? Let's say an Uber tank, the superest tank that ever was. Might be difficult, but it's doable. And because of the way life works, it will be done. And I feel like there is some key point to this I am close to and I am not apprehending. It's not the idea that formlessness allows you to do great things or be a great supporter of form. It feels like the point I'm close to is there is some totality or completion in formlessness. I mean, even formlessness isn't, at least on this side of the fence, isn't strictly formless. You still know what a tornado is by its form. I think there's a plane of existence that there is something much higher, much greater, and much more important in as vague and opaque a way as I can say it in this formlessness idea, especially when it comes to identity. And then the regularly scheduled That Woman segment. She, of course, mogs everybody. She's everything all at once, the best of the best, the exception. When I met her, she was decidedly in the Elias camp, the tank. Hers was hardline Christianity. The difference with her, the exception with her, was, well, first, I kicked at her, tried to kick her legs out from underneath her, not in a malicious way, but in that insane love way. And she didn't hide from it, didn't fight it. She threw the entire tank away, almost immediately. A lifetime of building a tank. And it doesn't feel like she went tornado mode. It also feels like confusing. She threw away the tank and for a time was neither formed nor formless. And she was doing weird shit too. Like, she was still pushing these moral ideas, or her moral ideals. But now I didn't feel like I could hurt her. It's like she instantly and momentarily ascended into godhood. The ability to impose will without the ability to be imposed on. And my gut tells me that didn't last forever. But you don't understand how shocking that chain of events was. It went from something typical that you are reacting to atypically into something that is highly, highly atypical and then into impossible. I still have no idea what that was or why it was. How can a person do both? And more importantly, how can a person do both that quickly? I think she took one day to cry about everything, and after that day, it was like she was a different beast. How does a person fall back to zero and then ascend past 100 in a day? I have no earthly idea. And I'm sure I am exaggerating, I'm romanticizing, I'm idealizing, I'm all these dismissive, doubtful things. Good to be dismissive, good to be doubtful. That'll protect you. But that doesn't change what I saw. And I trust my nose, that doesn't change the way that entire thing smelled. She smelled one way, which was rather typical. I mean, high level, but typical. And then she smelled like something otherworldly. Anyway, wrapping up, be very careful about relying on identity. I feel Elias and Barnes could reach the same heights, but Barnes is going to get there really fast once that momentum starts rolling. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.